Right, hello mate from New York.
Greetings from London.
Excellent. We are talking again about pitches, which has been a bit of a theme, I think, for the last few episodes. But this time we're talking about money. And the question is, how much does money, so the commercial terms, influence the final decision of a typical media pitch? So what is going on?
And the answer to your question, Tom, is a lot less, thankfully. So perhaps in the past, commercial commitments, trading commitments have had a massive influence on the decision making, not only to go to pitch, but also to select a particular agency. We saw that in 2015, in the big year in 2015. The briefs that we're seeing last year, the briefs that we're seeing this year have been far more strategic. So the requirements of clients with regards to their media agency partners, certainly to go to tender and then to select a partner, have been far more strategic. All about talent, all about strategic capabilities to drive them forward. Those are certainly the ways that progressive advertisers are looking at the marketplace.
Yeah, and I think actually we should reference, there's a really good blog post. If you go to idcomms.com, we have a blog post called the 6 and only 6 reasons to call a media pitch, which you have a read of that without us going into the detail now, because cost saving is not a good sole objective for launching a media review, because then it does obviously become all about money. But as you say, we think it's moved on since then.
Yes. So what are the implications?
Well, implications are, I'm going to share a quote with a very, very wise client of ours who asked this question, said, price in a pitch is a leveler, not a differentiator. And what they mean by that is that the agencies that are participating, you expect to be able to buy media to a certain standard, right? Nowadays, the spread of pricing between one agency and another, because they've aggregated all of this, a massive scale and negotiation leverage, the spread of pricing is pretty narrow, typically. And agency fees are normally within a variation, typically. So the clients now typically expect the pricing to be a leveler, and that means if you're a big multi-billion-dollar global advertiser and you're looking for a media agency, you'd expect the 3 or 4 agencies that you're talking to be able to buy within a range, and the resource and talent cost to be within a simple range. And that is, point of entry, if you like, right? Then it's not a differentiator. They don't expect to be able to drive huge gaps and differences between one agency and another. It just kind of gets you into the game, and the differentiator, as you just shared, these days is the quality of strategy and talent. Really, is the major differentiator. And so the pitch has to be designed, and the decision making has to be designed in order to identify those other qualities, the strategy and the talent. So, what our advice to all advertisers at the beginning of a pitch is to establish what we call the evaluation criteria, right? How are you going to make a decision? And that's really important to do right at the beginning, because typically the first thing you want to do is align all of the stakeholders on the client side. Don't assume that they all agree, right? The purpose of this pitch. For an example, in some organizations, you may have a marketing group and a procurement group who, whilst very collaborative and good colleagues and nice people, may have slightly different objectives in mind, right? The typical accusation towards procurement, which unfair typically, is procurement only care about the cost, and marketers just kind of care about the talent and the ideas. Not always strictly that black and white, but you might have separate, slightly different objectives. Establishing the evaluation criteria up front gets all that out of the way and aligns them on what are we looking for, right? What is the right agency? And it's important to establish that up front. It keeps objectivity through the whole process, because you can track and mark against that, and it helps you then evaluate the final agencies against that criteria. The other thing is it allows you to share that with the agency, and we strongly advocate that the advertiser, once we've agreed what the evaluation criteria should be, we share that very transparently with all participating agencies. So not only do they want to win this business, they can understand how they can win, right? And how they can focus their resources. And it hopefully avoids, not always, because unfortunately we still see this, hopefully avoid scenarios where agencies come in at the 11th hour with these Hail Mary plays, I think the Americans call them, where they literally say, whatever commercial offer you've got, we'll beat it by 10%. That still happens. And agencies need to stop undercutting each other in that way, because it undermines the integrity of the process, and frankly, it undermines the integrity of agencies themselves, and they further commoditize themselves if they continue to do that. So you've got to establish the criteria, and everyone has to play by those rules.
Well, the big implications for marketers when they're preparing for a pitch and looking at the evaluation criteria is to very clearly define what the filters are that they're going to measure the agency's performance. And we typically refer to these as the 3 C's. Capability, the ability of an agency to fulfill the strategic requirements of that client. Cultural fit, whether there is that fit, whether there is that empathy, and the 3rd C is the commercial side of it. Now, defining that and then ultimately working out what weighting each of those C's has to the overall performance and the overall decision making is absolutely critical. We tend to recommend against anything over 50% for commercial, because then once the agency sees that, they think or they feel that perhaps that can be bought. So finding a clear balance between cultural fit, capability, and commercials is absolutely critical.
Right, so the media snack bottom line on money in pitches is that 1, pricing is a leveler, not a differentiator. Secondly, the evaluation criteria, particularly for the commercial terms, needs to be agreed up front. And thirdly, that has to be communicated to the agency so they know where to focus their resources. Right, good week 4.
Well, I think it's a good week for an industry legend, Phil Georgiadis, who is the global chairman of Blue 449 and the UK chairman of Publicis Media, is retiring after 21 years, having founded Walker Media, which then was kind of merged into Blue 449, became part of Publicis Media, and he is retiring after 2 decades of being at the same agency. And I think, people refer to him as Big Phil, Phil the Greek. He's widely regarded as a gentleman of the industry and one of the good guys, and he's retiring after a long innings. So, best of luck to you, Phil. It's been a bad week for...
Well, in related news, so congratulations to Phil, and best of luck enjoying your wine collection, Phil. But in related news, and the same day that obviously this is a combined press release that came out of Publicis, the same day that they announced that Phil was going to be retiring, stepping down from his role, they made the announcement, Publicis Media made the announcement, and it has to be one of the most confusing agency press releases I think we've ever seen, certainly in the way that it got picked up by the press. As I understand, Publicis Media have taken Blue 449, which is the agency that Phil has been running for the last few years, which, if you remember, was a rebranded version of a well-established Publicis agency called Optimedia. That brand died. Blue 449, strange name agency, kind of took its place, and it became part of this new Publicis Media kind of family. And an announcement yesterday by Publicis Media said that the agency Blue 449 was being merged under Spark Foundry, which is, if you're following all of this kind of brand musical chairs, was the rebranded version, I think, of MediaVest or something like that, if you can keep up with all of this. So Publicis Media seem to be addicted to changing their brands and smashing them together. Consolidation being a good thing, by the way, which we wholly advocate. But it's just not clear, like what is happening with Blue 449. It says it's going to be a local agency. Spark is going to be the global agency. They're going to share clients. I can see that's an operational nightmare. It's not clear exactly who the leadership is, and I just don't think, maybe this has not been thought through properly, or it's been thought through properly but just not communicated well at all to the industry. So speaking to a couple of clients yesterday, they weren't clear exactly how this was going to work or how it was going to affect them. So I think agency communication, PR, can do better, please.
Yeah, and Phil's well out of it.
Right, question of the week, a big question. Is money still too much the deciding factor in media pitches?
Yes, no, whatever.
Excellent. You can go to idcomms.com to get more resources on this. We'll link to the 6 Reasons to Pitch blog. I think you should have a look at that. But that's your media snack for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Bye for now.
See you next time.